Hey there, welcome to your positive energy recharge. I'm Jade Sterling, your women's health nurse and coach. I'm here to help you to balance your hormones, master your emotions, and create a life you love. And today we're talking about what to do with grief. Grief is a bit of a sneaky emotion. It's a normal, natural human emotion that is necessary and valuable and purposeful for our bodies to process and then express and then assimilate and then eliminate from our bodies so that we can actually learn and grow and expand into the best version of our future selves. But grief is quiet. Grief is heavy. Grief is slow. It's less dynamic. Physiologically, it may feel like other emotions like anger or frustration or anxiety or panic. It quietly moves through you. And sometimes it can get stuck. And when I say get stuck, emotions don't get trapped in the body as such. It's really important to understand that, because a lot of people think that if you don't process and express your emotions, they get trapped in the body. That's not really how it works, because our emotions are physiological processes that last for 90 seconds in the body. 90 seconds. That when your brain has a thought that it believes, it releases chemicals into the bloodstream. The bloodstream is energy in motion. It creates emotion that actually shows up as a feeling in our body, and that feeling will only last for 90 seconds unless you have another thought that triggers another chemical reaction that generates the same feeling. So it's actually been tested and studied and looked at in scientific research and literature to show that the actual physiological process of an emotion, which is what you feel, lasts for 90 seconds in the body unless triggered by another thought. So emotions can't get trapped in the body. What's happening is the chemicals that are being released and how they're interacting with the internal systems and organs and cells of your body, and how that has an impact on your overall physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual health and well-being. And grief, as I said, has no less of an impact on our nervous system, but it's a lot more physiologically quiet on the inside. And so we don't always know what to do with this heavy weight that, for me, certainly has come into my life, into my heart, into my entire body after experiencing some kind of event that has brought on a feeling of grief. And I'll just share with you really briefly that my experience of grief, we have become good friends over the last handful of years or so because of the series of events in my life. But 2022 was really the catalyst for me meeting grief face to face and realizing that I didn't know what to do with it, and it would possibly destroy me if I wasn't able to manage to process, express, assimilate, eliminate, and move on. So this became part of my journey. All of my story you'll see in my videos, part 1 and part 2 of my story. And then the first 2 positive energy recharges that I have done in this series explain a little bit more about my story. But just very brief nutshell to put things in context for why I'm showing up here right now is that at the beginning of 2002, I feel like that was the beginning of me experiencing a process of grief. I was really grieving my marriage at the time. You know, things change in life. My husband and I have been through a lot. He is the closest person to me and certainly my most dearest, best friend and companion. I'm so grateful for him. Our relationship certainly changed over time. And in 2022, I was experiencing a time where I felt the grieving of our relationship as it was before we had children, because I was finding that parenting was changing everything. And I saw a really on point reel with Michelle Obama the other day where she was saying, you're a person, an independent person, you're starting to find yourself, you've got another independent person who's starting to find themselves, and then you come together as a couple, and it's awesome. Often, that's why you stay together, because you complement each other, you benefit each other, you entertain each other, you support each other, and then you have kids. And that's not to say that it all goes bad, because I have another story of my husband and I, when we did our nursing training together, walking into a practicum we were attending where we had to be on the floor working, but we walked into this job holding hands. And one of the other nurses said, "You guys mustn't have kids." And I remember going, "Oh, what a terrible thing to say." She said, "Because you're holding hands." And I remember thinking, I'm never going to be like that. But of course, through personal experience, you realize how having children changes everything. It does. And it changes things, though, in different ways for different people at different times. So some of you might be thinking, yes, it changed everything, but we were still okay. I was prepared for pregnancy. I was prepared for labor and childbirth. I was prepared for the postpartum period. I was prepared for the changes in my body, the changes in my life. I was not prepared for the changes that would occur in my marriage and my relationship with my husband at the time. And so this was a process. Our eldest was 10 in 2022. And so that's often a time. They say that the postnatal period actually lasts for 10 years, physically, mentally, emotionally. And so it was around this time I remember feeling that my husband and I were drifting apart, and it didn't necessarily mean that relationship was ending, but certainly it was different. And I really felt a grief behind that. At the same time, a cyclone event coupled with a weather pattern on the east coast of Australia created weather that in the end eventuated in a massive flood in our town and wiped out our entire town. Houses, people, shops, infrastructure, services. We literally had nothing. We were lucky that our house is on a hill, and we sort of say that where I live, it's a wok. Anything that was in the wok, the valley of the wok, was gone, and everything above that was okay. But our entire town was in the wok. So not only that, but the shops that were a little bit out of town to have to go and get bread, milk, etc., the trucks couldn't even get in because the roads were closed and the weather was so extreme, and it was a really difficult time. And my mum was one of those people who lost everything. She was so fortunate, though. Go back and watch some of my other videos to find out that story in much more depth. But she came to live with us for the time where she was reestablishing and having to find a new home and build a new life. And she turned 70 during that time. You'll also know, if you've seen any of my previous videos, particularly my story, that my mum did not get to enjoy optimal health and well-being physically or mentally, and her health was a challenge. And over the time that she came to live with us after the flood, where I was grieving my town, grieving my marriage, when my mum came here to live with us while she was grieving everything that she had lost, her health definitely started to deteriorate. And I remember at the time there feeling like her spirit was getting bigger, but her physical and mental health were declining. And after she eventually found a new home and was able to replace a lot of the things, but not necessarily things of value, but things necessary for survival and living, she became very unwell. She had to go into hospital, and after a series of events, she passed away. And so I was grieving my mum at this time too. We were still rebuilding our town. We were still trying to rebuild our community and our lives. I was still trying to rebuild my marriage. My mum really was the most important person, aside from my husband, who I feel like you can't put one above the other. But again, if you go back to the 7 key relationships video, you'll see how I triaged myself during that time to be able to manage. How was I going to manage trying to keep my relationships intact, keep them connected, keep them alive without killing them or killing myself in the process. And it was very challenging. And grief set in deep with my mum because we had a very deep bond. We were so close. We spoke to each other every day before she came to live with us. And she lived with us at different times over the last 10 years because she hadn't had the opportunity to experience great health and needed some support. So, but of course, it had been a lifelong journey with my mum and my relationship with her. And this was the biggest thing ever. That's how it felt at the time. And it felt heavy and it felt slow, and time completely stopped. And I remember feeling, and I've explained my story before, how my inner pilot light went out in a time where I was experiencing a lot of disharmony, discontent. You could say depression. There is a difference between an emotion of depression and clinical depression, where you can't function, you can't brush your teeth, you can't make your lunch, you can't care for your kids. I was in an emotion of depression. This was all when I was told I was perimenopausal and there's nothing I could do about my hormones, and this inner pilot light that had kept me going the whole time just went out. And that scared me, and I knew I needed to find it. But this particular experience with grief, my pilot light didn't go out like in that experience, but it was the only way I can just have a visual on the inside of me, which is how I was able to start to process, is that it was covered in a big grey cloud. And that cloud felt heavy, and it was so hard to breathe, and it was so hard to think. And I couldn't have a conversation with another person, and I couldn't engage or make decisions or pay my bills, or I was so surprised by how my 5 senses just shut down. But I still felt on the inside the need to move forward, the need to move on, but I didn't know how to do it. So that was the beginning. And then, to be completely honest, I could tell you so many more internal processes ever happened over the next 3 years. But 12 months to the day that my mum passed away, my father-in-law passed away, my husband's dad, that was expected, not expected, very much like my mum, didn't get to enjoy good health physically or mentally, but definitely was a little bit more of a surprise for him to go so quickly. He just had his 68th birthday, and then he passed away a week later. 6 months later, another person that was so dear to me, my grandmother, my Italian grandmother, my nonna, passed away at the age of one day before her 95th birthday. She was 94. She was about to turn 95. She passed away the day before her birthday. And so I don't tell you this for any other reason except to tell you that I've gotten to know grief really well. And if I hadn't have learned in the first instance how to process, express, assimilate, and eliminate and move on, it could have become so detrimental to me and my health and well-being, but would have rippled out to my husband and to my kids and to the rest of my family, and I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing right now. And I have friends at the moment who are going through these stages of grief, losing people that are so dear to them, and certainly clients who come not knowing how to move forward in their life, and we're uncovering this underlying cloud of grief is just holding them back, or is keeping their pilot light from burning so brightly to be able to connect with themselves, with their purpose, with their people in their lives, and to be able to live a life that feels fulfilling and worthwhile. So there's 3 things to do with your grief. 1 is to cry. That might seem like an obvious and easy thing for some people. It might seem like a completely unattainable, unrealistic, undoable things for others. But it is really important to cry. I often liken emotions to, well, they are normal bodily functions. And bear with me in this analogy, it might not be the most thoughtful one for this particular emotion, but when it comes to our digestive system, emotions, we have to digest them just like food. We eat food, we need to process it in the body, it needs to get assimilated, it needs to do what it needs to do for us physiologically, it needs to help us to build our muscles, our cells, give us energy, give us life, and then we need to eliminate it from the body. It comes out the other end and we flush it down the toilet, the bits that we don't need, right? If we try to hold on to the bit that needs to get eliminated, then this has a big impact on us physically and mentally and emotionally. You can't hold on to a poo, it needs to come out. I'm sorry. But you also can't force it. You can't force it out if you know that you need to get rid of it and you don't want it and you want to get it out of you. You also can't force it. Otherwise, there's also repercussions from that. Sometimes it's physically not possible. Other times you can try and you can have physical, mental, emotional repercussions from that. When we have thoughts, they need to go through our body. They feed our body physiologically. It's not necessarily bad if it's a negative emotion. Sometimes things need to move. They need to shift. Our cells need certain messages. Our organs, our body systems, everything happens for a purpose. It's working for your body. But emotions, and they don't get stuck in your body either. They will get eliminated as they need to, but it's the actual process of how that works. People often talk about emotions getting stuck in your body, but you don't let emotions get stuck in your body. Feel them and then process them to eliminate them. Yes, but emotions themselves don't get stuck. Emotions will last for 90 seconds in your body. It's been tested. It's been scientifically proven and trialed. And when you have a thought that your brain believes, it releases chemicals into your bloodstream. Those chemicals are literally energy in motion. It is emotion moving through your body. It becomes what you feel. That feeling will last for 90 seconds physiologically, and then it will dissipate. Unless you have another thought that triggers the same emotion that gives you the same feeling. It's really important to understand. And it's the physiological process of thought creating the emotion and what the emotion does in your body to the cells and organs and body systems within you that has the impact of your physical, mental, and emotional health. So it's not the emotion itself that gets stuck. It's the physiological response and how that actually interacts with the systems of your body. I hope that that's clear. It's that process that we have to learn to assimilate and eliminate and let move through us so that then we can continue to learn and grow and expand and thrive despite the ongoing experience of emotions that don't feel good within our body, but they all have purpose. So crying is a really necessary physiological process to help your body to release the hormones that are triggered by grief. So again, your brain has thoughts. It releases chemicals. A lot of the time, these chemicals are very specific hormones that do impact our nervous system, adrenaline, cortisol. There's lots of processes in place. But as I said, grief feels a lot slower. It feels a lot heavier. It doesn't move as dynamically as some of the other ones that we can feel our heart racing or our blood pounding or our palms sweating or our thoughts racing. Grief is quieter and calmer, and generally speaking, but we can have a lot of secondary emotions with grief. We can still have anger, we can still have frustration, we can still have anxiety and panic. Just got to get clear on identifying the emotions as they come. But this is not your job at the time where you're thick in the midst of grief. Your job at the moment is, if you feel the urge to cry, you need to cry. Crying releases the hormones from your body. It actually momentarily tells your brain that you're safe, that you are safe, even if your loved one is not, or there's been processes where it has been a shock, or it has been traumatic or dramatic. In the moment of releasing tears, you are safe. It actually then recalibrates your entire nervous system, creates a new baseline, settles down your breathing, your cardiovascular system, and helps you to access the frontal part of your brain that usually exits the building when your emotions are high and it's hard to think. That's when you can't think. That's when everything feels heavy and hard and you can't make decisions, you can't pay your bills, you can't move forward. Crying is necessary to release the stress and the hormones and keep the blood flow available to us to be able to function. And so crying is really helpful, really necessary, and really okay at this time. I remember feeling like it was the first time after my mum passed away that crying was necessary for me to do. I've always felt that crying is just either weak, or it's a waste of time, or it never felt good. I know that that's a subject where some people don't agree with. My sister and I have had the conversations. She loves to have a good cry. It makes her feel the relief and the release of the hormones and the tension and the stress and the recalibration of the nervous system. And I've had some moments of that in my life, but I always have generally felt like crying was just would get in the way, and it would make me feel like somehow I was a failure. Somehow I'd not been able to keep myself together, and it became a really negative experience. But after my mum passed away and I cried, I remember feeling the relief and the release and realizing this is so necessary. And then finding out there are actual specific practical benefits physiologically to be able to help you process the emotion of grief and help your body to be able to move through the experience in a way that actually serves you. Now I'm a champion for crying, and I think that we don't cry enough, and that's probably a whole other video that I could do on the process of crying, which I may do sometime. The second thing to do with grief is to feel it in your body. Now, I explained before how I couldn't put my finger on the word grief at the time, but I could see my pilot light inside my heart clouded like in a big black cloud that felt heavy and hard and was like mud to be able to move my body through the experiences of just my daily living, just being able to brush my teeth or butter the toast or answer the phone. Everything felt so heavy, like I was in mud. And when I started to actually become aware of how it was feeling in my body, it took the little elements of the heavy experience away and made it lighter, slowly and surely. And I was making toast one day, and I remember feeling like I was in a pool of mud up to my neck, and picking up the knife was such an effort, and then moving the knife through the process of getting the butter off out of the container, putting it on the toast. But when I tuned into that and I decided to fully visualize the mud and fully visualize the process of this is why it feels so heavy, and looking at my body in the mud, holding the knife, trying to butter my toast, my brain, I remember this particular moment saying, yeah, no wonder it feels heavy. Look at all the mud that you're in. And suddenly the mud started to fall away, and it fell away to my waist, and my arms felt free, and everything felt a bit lighter. And I buttered my toast with just a little bit more ease. The more I tuned into visualizing what was happening on the inside of my body, the softer it got and the lighter it got, until the mud was all gone, and one day there was just the black cloud around my pilot light. And I just was aware of that, and just saying out loud, there is a black cloud around my pilot light, and not doing anything else about it. If you haven't watched my other videos about my description of my inner pilot light and how I activate my heart and the space, the center of my forehead, to be able to move forward, you may not understand the description of the black cloud around my pilot light, or it may not make sense to you. But if you've experienced grief, you have, or you are going through it right now, you tune into what's happening at your heart, which is the center of your energy, you will feel something. And if you can tune into what's happening in there and just acknowledge that it's heavy right now without doing anything else, become aware of how it feels in your body. This is grief, and this will help you to be able to process. And then you will so effortlessly express it as a result, with the third thing to do with grief, and that is to breathe. Now, some people think you have to use words to express something. You don't always have to use words. You can use your words if that feels like the right thing to do, and it feels cathartic, and it feels cleansing, detoxifying to your body, and it feels good, like a good cry. If that doesn't work for you, you can write things down to express how you're feeling. You can sing to express how you feel. You can dance. You can move your body to express how you're feeling. Expression can happen in so many different ways, but it can also be just as simple as breathing, which is the most important. And we breathe all day, don't we? And we don't even think about it. So we have a multitude of opportunities to be able to settle into that and help our grief move through us and be expressed, and then be eliminated and help us move forward through the process. But because breathing is so integral in our daily life and it's so automatic and we don't have to think about it, here's what I recommend that you do. You get out your phone. My phone is here, but I have another phone over there that I can't quite reach. But I'd like you to get out your phone right now. Do this with me right now. And set 3 alarms, one to go off at 7 a.m., one to go off at 12 p.m., and one to go off at 5 p.m. These are just random times that I've chosen and choose to do for myself. If these times don't suit you, you can change them. They're not set in stone. They don't make or break this to work or not, but there are 3 times that I suggest to you. Whenever your alarm goes off at those 3 times, I want you to stop whatever you're doing, wherever you are. And I want you to inhale in through your nose like you're smelling your favorite scented flower. Mine is a bush gardenia. Oh, it's my favorite. Inhaling through your nose. And then exhale out through your mouth like you're blowing out a birthday candle. A little bit more force than what you normally would. Inhale in through your nose. And exhale, blow out the birthday candle. We do this 3 times each time the alarm goes off. So that's 3 times breathing, 3 times per day. If you just do this without worrying about anything else, this will recalibrate your nervous system in a way that thinking, speaking, talking, writing, even crying can't. It is the way that the breath is the bridge between what's happening with you physically in your physical consciousness and what's happening with your subconscious and even your superconsciousness. We're going to go there one day when we talk about spirituality and how that can help to balance your hormones and your emotions as well. But the breath is the bridge between consciousness, aware consciousness in this physical body, and our sub or super consciousness that we're not aware of our mental and emotional and spiritual body. And this actually is activated in the brain. And again, another day I'm going to talk exactly about the anatomy and physiology behind it. But right now, I don't want you to think too hard. I want you to know, though, that it's reprogramming your brain to establish its foundation of physical, mental, and emotional health in a place of safety, and will help you through the process of the heavy weight of grief. So 3 times a day, in through the nose, out through the mouth, 3 times every time the alarm goes off. And with the use of those 3 things, allowing yourself to cry whenever you feel the need, being aware of how grief is feeling in your body, even if you're not aware of it as grief, what is your body feeling during this time? How do you feel inside your body? And 3, setting your alarm to breathe, recalibrate your brain in a place of safety, dial down your nervous system. This will support you through the process of processing and expressing and assimilating and eliminating the emotion of grief. But I know sometimes grief actually feels good. Now, some of you may think that I'm crazy when I say that out loud, but I remember sometimes feeling like the mud was like warm, a warm, comforting blanket. And I didn't want to move through it because I wanted to miss my mum and I wanted to go back to my marriage when it was new and my relationship when we first met. And I wanted my town to be back together and in one piece. And I wanted my father-in-law back. And I didn't want to move on from losing my grandmother. And for a time, that's okay. But if we hold on to things, that's why we have to feel it in our body. If the mud feels smooth and we can move through it and we can cry and we can remember to breathe, it will naturally move of its own accord. And when you're ready to move through it and move on, you will, because we can't force it. But if we're holding on to it with tension, if we're trying to pull the mud in, if we're trying to hold on to our breath, if we're trying not to cry, then it will get harder. It will get stuck and it will have a physical, mental, and emotional impact on your body. And that won't be helpful to you when 5 years, 10 years, however many years, it could even be tomorrow. Everyone's process is different, but when you're ready to move on, and if you have created a clay block from the mud that you are holding onto and you can't figure out why you can't move forward, you're going to still have to go through the process of softening the clay to move through the mud, to be able to get through if you want to learn and grow and expand and evolve. Because that's what we're here to do as humans. That's going to lead into the next video for next week about spirituality and the role that that has in our physical, mental, emotional, hormonal health and well-being. But I hope that this has been able to shed a little bit of light on a dark subject it can be sometimes, and can help for you to just give you permission to feel it. But then sometimes when we get to a point where we don't know what to do with it, now you know what to do with it. Go back and watch this again if you need to, and share it with anyone who you think this might be helpful for. So go out there now and own your path, create your peace. Take care, and I'll see you in the next video.